Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar, I am Dr. Susmitha Mallaya, Professor, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. So today I am here to take class on the subject which we started yesterday, that is in continuation of it, the Essential Commodities Act and its impact on the society. And today I am here with you to see on the enforcement mechanism under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. Now, what are all the important aspects which we have discussed, or let us have a quick recap on what we have discussed so far. So if you look into it, it is a socio-economic offences, because this is part of the paper on socio-economic offences, and they are the reflections of the attitudes and the values of a particular society. Okay? And they're committed indirectly, anonymously, and becomes difficult to get detected, because it is very difficult to detect who has committed this type of crime. And you will not find any one person who has committed it. Let's take an example. If a murder is committed, there will be some witnesses, or there will be some persons who will be saying that this person has did it or that person has did it and all. But in case of this type of offense, like the socio-economic offense, you will not find any person as such who has did it, and you will not feel also. That is why it is known as, it is a victimless crime, because you will not find any victims, because there is no one single victim in this whole episode. Large number of victims, and large number of victims includes the whole society, and it is difficult to identify, because you cannot find one person as an accused. There will be others also who are associated with it. So it will have a wider impact on our economy and the social fabric. And it will be very late when we realize that. And how will you realize it? When the taxes increase, or when there are a lot of social norms that will be inflicted, then you will feel that what is happening to us, why it is happening, why suddenly there is a price increase in the commodities which you are buying from the market. Yes, there are certain reasons for it. It is not that every time we can see that, or we hear that it is because of the inflation, deflation, we hear all these things. But it may not be one of the reasons. There are people who are committing this type of crimes or offenses that deals, or that becomes the reason for this, but it is not identifiable as such. So that is why, in order to safeguard the interest of the common man, which we have discussed yesterday, the Essential Commodities Act of 1955 was enacted. And the main aim of this act, apart from what we have discussed, I'm just giving you the recap of what we discussed yesterday, the legislation as a whole, is to maintain stable, fair price of essential commodities and prevent hoarding and black marketing, right? And one more aspect which we have discussed is the list of essential commodities gets changed according to the needs. So according to the needs of the society, the list of the essential commodities also gets changed. So we have discussed this in the last class. Now let us see today what are the administrative mechanism that comes under the legislation. Now, in order to address that, let us ask a question. Why there is a need to control the commodities? Do you think that there is a need to control the commodities? There are a lot of commodities that is available in the market. Then why the government should interfere, or why the state should interfere and check that this commodity should be charged this much of price, this commodity need to be this much of price, and why there is a need for control? For this also, we can just look into how during the colonial period, it all started because in the class I told you that because of the colonial, how the colonial persons influenced for later having the legislations. So during the colonial period, the goal of the state had always been to control and subordinate India's economy to meet its needs. and the state had regularly intervened in industry and agriculture. See, there are two important aspects. One is industry and other is agriculture. Without these two things, remember one aspect, no country can progress. So if you want a country to progress, there should be good industries and there should be agriculture. Agriculture is the lifeblood of the people. You need food to eat. Just having the industries for next step apart from the agriculture. So both these are the robust, then the country will progress. But the nature of this control was transformed with the outbreak of the World War II. You all remember, maybe you all not born that time, but yes, heard about the World War II, right? So the nature of the control started because of that. What happened? The original dispensation of the Government of India Act, the commodity control was a power that was given exclusively to the provinces. You remember, now we are calling them as a state, and earlier they were known as the provinces. So the exclusive power were given to them. And this was significant as the provinces were to be governed by popularly elected government as opposed to the centre, which was under the direct control of British Viceroy. So there you can see the difference, how the British Viceroy, who were the main chief of the central, and then the provinces that were there. Now the colonial government at Delhi, they seized the control over the economy through the proclamation of the state of emergency under the Government of India Act of 1935, and which was followed by the Defence of India Act of 1939. So if you remember, we have discussed extensively in the yesterday's lecture regarding the Defence of India Act, its aims and how it has progressed and all. So the control of the commodities, we can see that the Defence of India Act consists of the rules, and the rules provided for the government to regulate or prohibit the production, treatment, storage, movement, transport and distribution, acquisition, use or consumption of any article. Now, the government got the power to prevent an article from being sold or force it to be sold. Then it could fix the prices of any commodity. The price of the commodities were also fixed by the government. At what price the commodity need to be sold in the market is also fixed by whom? By the government. And this is, I'm talking about the rules that has been framed under the Defence of India Act. Then the state intervention was limited. So what was the role of the state during that time? It is limited to the controlling the prices of necessities, and that same, there is a medical supplies, food, salt, cooking oil and cotton cloth. So one thing what I have noticed is that during the colonial period, or we can say that when this legislation of the Defence Act was framed, the state controlled more on the salt. But as I discussed, if you remember in the yesterday, what I mentioned is that it was the sugar. The sugar has been made as part of the essential commodities. So from the salt, we have reached to the sugar. So just to keep it in your mind, for that, we will discuss later. So commodities, we can say that what I'm saying is that it will keep on changing. Now, next is, do you think that the departments were formed now? No, it was there earlier as well. So departments were formed to control the food shortages. So remember one thing, there were food shortages. There are food shortages because economy was not that much progressive. We got the freedom in the midnight, and when we got the freedom, then we were not aware of how to govern because we were already used to govern by the Britishers. So they just gave us a freedom on midnight, and suddenly how you can see the economy was progressed or not, we don't have that much idea about it. And suddenly we have seen that there is a lot of calamities we have to face. There was no funds in the exchequer of the government, and food shortages were there. So the chronic food shortages and the famine condition of the Bengal, you can see that during the creation of the food department in 1942. So though we got the freedom in 1947, the food department in 1942 and the imposition of the controls over all food grains was followed in the similar pattern. Then finally, faced with the chronic shortages of the consumer goods, the government set up the Department of the Civil Supplies in 1943, and that was tasked with creating a comprehensive system of controls over the production and the distribution of almost all consumer goods. Now, what are all these consumer goods has not been mentioned, but that we have to imagine what all will be, because it is for the survival or the existence. Okay, and with the initiation of the measures to eliminate hoarding and black marketing. Now, you can see that a provincial minister for food and civil supplies, he noted that given the interconnectedness of the market, controls tend to multiply rapidly. So there was one control after control by the government in order to regulate the market, and the main intention was to see or to take care of the food shortages that were prevailing. Now, what was the administrative setup? The administrative setup, I'm just reading a quote on that. Control over the food grains led to the control of fuel, then to sugar and the jaggery, and on to potatoes and groundnuts, and then to tamarind, and from tamarind to the chilies, and from chilies to onions. Every complaint about the shortage or high price of any item brought an excuse for imposing control on that item, and seekers of the permits and licenses crowded the multiplying offices, and the lines got larger and longer. So what we can see is that though these departments were formed, it was not able to control. Instead, what it resulted in, the more control, the more there will be the need for the people for that goods, or particularly the crowd was their license, because you will start the sale only if you got the license. Now, this system gave the government wide discretion to control commodities, and administrative authorities controlled commodities. How they have controlled it? Through an elaborate system of licenses and permits to control production, distribution, sale, purchase, and storage. Now, apart from this, the Defence of India rules, it also provided for the appointment of a controller at the provincial level for each commodity, and the demands of the licensing system led to the creation of the massive economic bureaucracy. The term used is the economic bureaucracy. So that means without any kind of anything that we can say that bureaucracy controlled the nation. Economic bureaucracy is one among them. So the demand for the license. So if you want to get a license for the sale, then the bureaucrat will give you the license, because he is the administrative head, and he is the controller, that is the appointment of the controller. Now, while the powers of the officers varied, it's not that only one person, second person. So like the hierarchy, there were many officers who were involved in it. So the powers of the officers varied, and they were all able to impose significant restrictions on, so you can see that significant restrictions on the trade and usage of commodities. And there was absence of any standards or tests to control the exercise of the executive discretion, as well as the lack of safeguards to protect the interest of those affected. So what we can say is that there was the lack of any kind of standards or the test to see whether the executives are using their discretion in a fair manner or not. So if there is no check and bounds, then how we will know that the power that is assigned to me, I am using it in a fair manner? There is no other one person to look after it. And if you remember, I have mentioned that any orders that were given by the executive at that time, executive I mean the bureaucrats that time who were the administrative head, you cannot challenge the same in the court of the law, and not to any higher authority. So that means you have got the absolute freedom, absolute power were given to you. Absolute power, that means absolute freedom. And this absoluteness always creates more harm in the society. And there was little or no protection given to the producers. So what is happening to the producers? There is no protection to them, the dealers, and against it, the consumers. So when they misuse or they exercise their power improperly, there was nothing you can do. And there was almost no criteria to be kept in mind while granting the license. So is there any procedure to grant the license? The answer is no. There was no procedure. It is always at the whims and fancies of the officer who is appointed. So there is nothing wrong in it, right? But only thing is that when you get the absolute freedom and there is no check and bounds, then it will result for a kind of, we can say that may be one of the reasons to increase for the corruptions and all, because yes, I like you, so I have given you that. In behalf of that license, I am getting some kind of favor. So, and if I don't want to give you, then I am not giving you. So there is nothing that I should give you the license or not to give. There was no procedure that has been established. So most of the licenses also could be cancelled if they will. So what are the key points here? The administrative head is appointed, who will look after to control the commodities. He will decide whom to give the license, whom not to give the license, and after giving the license, if you are not acting as per his will, then your license will also get cancelled and you cannot challenge it. So the example is that the food grains orders, you can see that the food grains order specifically provided that the license could be cancelled without giving any notice or reasons to the license. So this is what is the problematic area, that is, you cannot approach any person for any kind of aspect when the license is cancelled. For getting the license, of course, you can approach him and then he will say whatever he says, you have to follow. There will be the good administrators as well. We are not saying that all were bad, but that became a platform for the increase, or we can say the kind of crime or the offense that the person started doing it. So there were no limits were placed on the powers of the licensing authority, which paved way for corruption. That is the very important aspect. So now, why we are speaking about the colonial times, why we are speaking about the Defence Act rules. So remember one thing, it is not that this crime has its origin now. The socio-economic crimes has its origin long back, before we got the freedom, and it is continued, or we can say that now the government are taking measures to curb the same, and to spread the awareness about this type, because we are not much aware about this type of crimes or offense, because we don't feel that they are the offense or the crime, because it is not harming us as an individual person. If somebody's shop license is cancelled, do you think that I'm going to get it affected? No, why should I? Because I will go to another shopkeeper and I will purchase the goods. So I'm not going to get it affected. Only thing, when I'm getting affected, then I will be thinking, oh, why it happened like that, right? So no limits were placed on the powers of the licensing authority, which paved way for corruption by way of the ghost ration card. It is very interesting. The ghost ration cards. So what happened, this is with respect to the Bengal famine that happened. So the government started giving the commodities for the ration card holder. Now there were a lot of ration card in the name of X, Y, Z. You go and visit, you will not find X, you will not find Z, and instead of that you can see that many grandmother, grandfather or the aunt maybe, and they all become your dependent. You may not have any kind of relationship also, but you made them aunt, you made them, you made them the grandmother, and then the same person may be you are dependent in multiple cards. So this is known as the ghost card. People are not real. No real people are there, but in the ration card. So the grains, food grains or the rations are allotted to you based on the ration card that is produced before me. But I am not going to come and look into a house whether the persons are there or not. So, but in the list that is provided, I have this much of people. So accordingly, I am giving you the food grains. And what happened? Increasing number of household members. See, there were lot of household members in one card. So the control system was not only manipulated by the citizens, it had also emerged as a major side of the governmental corruption. This is what? You control, it's fine. Minimum control, it is fine. But when you control more, and you will say that only one ration for one person, this much of goods I am going to give. So, but you need more. So what you will do? Naturally, you will accumulate others into it, so that in one ration card there are 10 members. So for the 10 members, how much kgs? 1 kg you are giving. So the 10 kg a person will get. So like that, and the person that is for this, getting the 10 persons incorporated in your ration card, you will get the help of the persons who is associated with it, and it became a platform for corruption. So for the 10%, for the 2 persons ration card, you have to pay, or to whatever means, whatever he says, you have to give. That's how it became a site for the governmental corruption. So that is how the corruption was the result of the peculiar structure of the commodity controls and the new hierarchy of the administrative officers set up to administer them. And now the people who were appointed as administrators were new. And it arose due to the vast discretion exercised by the petty bureaucrats and became public as a result of the temporary nature of their post, which meant they did not enjoy the same degree of immunity as permanent civil servant did. Say for example, I am not permanent here. I am here for 1 month or 2 months. So I will do the corruption, then I will vanish. So only, and next time when you come here, you will not see me. So nobody can catch hold of me because I was a temporary person. So that became, because the bureaucrats, they were not on a permanent basis, you will find, and this has resulted for the more corruption in the governmental system with respect to the governmental control. And after that, the post-colonial government found the control system is very unpopular, because after the elections, after we got the freedom and all, then the government found that it is a very bad system, because see, there are corruptions that is happening, and there is a need to decontrol it. So there is no need for the controlling of the commodities. So the question which I asked is whether there is a need for control. Now, what we can see is that after that, the government, after the colonial, that is the post-colonial, the government decided that now there is no need for the governmental control on the commodities, because it is fine. We are free now. We have got the independence. We got the independent economy. Everything we find that we got the freedom. But so in 1948, for a brief period, the government decontrol policies were adopted. Now the government decontrolled, or the government stopped controlling the commodity sale. Now what happened? It was a brief period. You know, there is Austin, we says that if sovereign command, because if there is a punishment, then only people will listen. If I am giving you the freedom, you will think that, okay, fine, it is fine. I am free, you are free, nobody can do anything to me. But if there is some kind of punishment, if I do this, then I may get punished, then you will think twice before doing any kind of thing. So similarly here also, when there was a control of the commodities, there was some kind of, though corruption were there was a control on the commodities. But what happened when the government has decontrolled it? The economic crisis has erupted in the system. So India faced the economic crisis, and when they found, that is in 1948, for a brief period only they went for the decontrol policies. But the economic crisis brought, and again a committee was constituted under the head of the Commodity Control Committee, and they examined, the Commodity Control Committee examined the representatives from the state governments, industries, Chamber of Commerce, economists and trade unions, and concluded that control of all essential commodities had to be regulated on all India basis. So they found that when the government controlled, though corruption was there, it was fine, because the people used to get the food, or the commodities were available, economy was okay. But now we are facing the economic crisis. So there is a need for the controlling of all essential commodities that need to be all India basis. That is what the Commodity Control Committee placed before the government. Now again, acknowledging the evidence that controls could and did also cause harm, the committee argued that they should be retained because they could also be used for a positive purpose. The committee recommended that the constitution be suitably amended to confer upon the central government reserved powers to control any committee, and that the parliament enact a comprehensive permanent law. So the controls in India, so that means they recommended for a permanent law. And the controls in India assume a different dimension, not just because of their framing as a politically neutral question about the economy, but also because the emergency was seen as a permanent condition arising due to an underdeveloped economy. So You remember that our economy was not developed that time. Now also our economy is developing. We have not developed yet. But at that time it was actually underdeveloped. When we got the freedom, we were underdeveloped. Our economy was underdeveloped. And the constitution explicitly empowered the president to declare the state financial emergency. So if we remember that the state emergency has been declared. We are not going into that, the repercussions of the emergency, what happened and all not. But of course, there are powers that has been given for the state for the financial emergency. That means the constitution in the enactment said that there can be a financial emergency as well. So what will happen if the financial emergency is declared? Then it's not that government servants all will get the salary. There will be regulations for that, and only how much you need, that only you will be getting. You will not get the full pay. Even if you are a government servant, then there is no need to speak about the other, what will be the condition. So they said that the declaration of financial emergency, if he or she were satisfied that there was an economic situation where the financial stability or the credit of India was threatened. So this is where we should look into that, the point which I told you, that socio-economic offense are very harmful. So if India is facing any kind of threats financially, then at any point of time the financial emergency can be declared. Then we will realize how it happened, why it happened. Then you will realize that yes, that is also an offense, that's also a criminal act that has been done, but it has affected us socially as well as economically. We have in a backbench. So what we can see is that the control system has resulted in making the Essential Commodity Act enacted also, and also the mechanism to control the same was also given more importance. Now, when we are speaking about the administrative setup, the aspect is who will enforce the act. Mere having a legislation, mere having any kind of enactment, or mere saying that laws are on place are not sufficient. It needs to get implemented. Now, who will implement or who will enforce the act? And they are the administrators. So, enforcement. So, just we have the three, that is the legislature, executive and the judiciary. When we have the legislature, we need that legislation need to be enforced, and for that enforcement, we got the administrative aspects or administrative setup. And who are they? According to this, we can see that the central government is given the power to administer the provisions of the Act by issuing the orders, directions notified in the official gazette, and by delegating the authority to state governments and administrators of union territories. So one is the central government, and another is the state government, and other is the administrators of the union territories. So for getting this Essential Commodities Act, the administrative setup is three. Now, the power to issue the orders. What is the power? The central government, having been vested with the powers under Section 3, Subclause 1, can issue order in the following circumstances, providing for regulating or prohibiting the production, supply and distribution of essential commodities and trade and commerce therein. What are all this? Section 3.1 speaks about it. What is Section 3.1 says? It says that when it is necessary or expedient for maintaining or increasing the supplies of any essential commodity. Secondly, for securing the equitable distribution and availability of essential commodities at fair price. And thirdly, for securing any essential commodity for the defense of India or for the efficient conduct of the military operations. Now, these are the three situations where the orders are issued under Section 3, Subclause 1. Now, what are all the contents of the order under Section 3, Subclause 2? So, Section 3, Subclause 2, provisions A to K, it's a very lengthy provision, but they provides for the order. What are the orders that can be issued by the three authorities which I told you about: the central government, state governments and the union territories. So, one is for regulating by licenses, permits or otherwise the production or manufacture of any essential commodity. Section 3, subclause 2, subclause B states that for bringing under cultivation any waste or arable land, whether appurtenant to a building or not, for growing thereon of food crops generally or of specified food crops, and for otherwise maintaining or increasing the cultivation of food crops generally or of specified food crops. Provision C says, for controlling the price at which any essential commodity may be bought or sold. Provision D says, for regulating by licenses, permits or otherwise the storage, transport, distribution, disposal, acquisition, use or consumption of any essential commodity. Then provision E says, for prohibiting the withholding from sale of any essential commodity ordinarily kept for sale. Then F says that for requiring any person holding in stock or engaged in the production or in the business of buying or selling or of any essential commodity. Now what are they? For what they need to do? It says again further, to sell the whole or a specified part of the quantity held in stock or produced or received by him, or in the case of any such commodity which is likely to be produced or received by him, to sell the whole or a specified part of such commodity when produced or received by him to the central government or a state government or to an officer or agent of such government or to a corporation owned or controlled by such government or to such other person or class of persons and in such circumstances as may be specified in the order. Now, provision G says, for regulating and prohibiting any class of commercial or the financial transactions relating to the foodstuffs which in the opinion of the authority making the order are or if unregulated are likely to be detrimental to the public interest, for collecting any information or statistics with a view to regulating or prohibiting any of the aforesaid matters, for requiring persons engaged in the production of or trade and commerce in any essential commodity to maintain and produce for inspection of books, accounts and record relating to their business, and to furnish such information relating to as may be specified in the order. Now provision J says that for the grant or issue of licenses, permits or other documents, the charging of fees thereof, the deposit of such sum, if any, as may be specified in the order, as security for the due performance of the conditions of any such license, permit or other document, the forfeiture of the sum so deposited or any part thereof for contravention of any such conditions, and the adjudication of such forfeiture by such authority as may be specified in the order. And provision K says that for any incidental and supplementary matters, including in particular the entry, search or examination of premises, aircraft, vessels, vehicles or other conveyance and animals, and the seizure of by a person authorized to make such entry, search for examination of any article in respect of which such person has reason to believe that a contravention of the order has been made. Now, this provision, section 3, is a very lengthy. You have seen this, okay? It consists of the A to K. Lot of sub-provisions I have just read for you. Now, this provision is what it says. It is the order can be given. That is, the administrative order can be given by the state, by the union territory or the center. And when they give the order, what are all the order can be given? That has been very extensively mentioned in this provision. So, those who are going to give any kind of order, either side, they have to read. So, most importantly is providing the license. And license for what all aspects? So, licensing, transporting, then storage, disposal, distribution, acquisition. These are all the key terms that you can keep in your mind when it need to be in the content, when you are speaking about the content of the order. Now, coming to the next aspect is whether these powers can be delegated, whether the powers of the central government can be delegated. Now, already we have discussed or we have seen that, but the specific provision that mentions is section 4 and section 5. It says about the delegation of the authority. It permits the central government to transfer the responsibilities to the state governments under section 4 or designated officials under section 5, and this promotes localized and efficient decision making and encourages collaboration and allows for adaptable responses to the regional issues. Now, why there is a need for a delegation? Now, when I am in Delhi, right, what is happening in the nook and corner of the Odisha, or for that matter Kerala, or for that matter Bihar, I don't know, because I am right now here. And now when we move further, when I am staying there, I will come to know what are all the problems they are facing there. But just because I am here, then I am just issuing an order. And what you need, I don't know, but I have issued an order. You know, this is a very important aspect. That's why a collaborative approach is there. So once I delegate my power to the person who is there, he will know what is more required for you. The commodity that may be required for me here, what is essential for me here, may not be the essential for you there. Okay, there you will have the surplus there. You may have the surplus commodity there, but here I am facing the crisis. So that is why there is a need, that is very important, that this provisions makes for the vocal for local. Nowadays, that is what is said. Localized and efficient decision making encourages the collaboration. So when you are taking any kind of decision, it should be an informed decision, and it will allow for the adaptable responses to the regional issues. So your regional issues are also taken care by the center. How? When the center is collaborating with the state and the regional persons there. So that is also provided under section 4 and section 5 of the Essential Commodities Act. Now, the another aspect or another important aspect that I need to discuss with you is the concept of the seizure and the confiscation of the essential commodities. Now, what are the important? Why? Suppose the essential commodities, I said that it's a punishable offense. It's a crime. Okay, the government has issued the order. Now, they have come to know that you have stocked or you are hoarded or you are not producing that is required. So what will happen then? And that is where the seizure and the confiscation of the essential commodities. The confiscation of the essential commodities is a sharp weapon which the Act has provided to the central government under section 6A of the Act. And there is a provision for 2 independent proceedings against the person charged with violation of the Act. What is there? 1. The confiscate the seized commodity by the collector under 6A. So here this collector is the powerful person under section 6A. And the punishment under section 7 for the violating the orders. So for the orders that was given by the collector, you will get the punishment if you are violating it order. And the orders are made under section 3, the lengthy provision, remember, which we just now discussed about it. And these penalties include the imprisonment, fine, forfeiture of the property, including any items, packages, vehicles, conveyances used in the contravention. And the specific penalties vary depending on the nature of the contravention. Now, what are the procedures that need to be followed by the collector under section 6A? So now you can see the difference which I am discussing with you. We have seen in the colonial time when the Defence Act was there was no procedure. There were no procedure. The administrative head or the bureaucrats, they themselves decided whom to give, what not to give. But the present act that has been constituted post-colonial period, that is Essential Commodities Act, it contains each and every aspect. It even contains who are all the authority. In the last class I mentioned about the definitions, the collector. Now you can see what collector can do. Why people want to be an IAS and to be the collector? The reason being that they have got the power, bureaucracy in this part and the procedure. So, but it is not that absolute power they have given. The Act has provided for the procedure that need to be followed by the collector under section 6A. What it says: when any essential commodity is seized in pursuance of an order made under Section 3, a report of such seizure shall be made without any unreasonable delay to the collector of the district or the presidency town in which such essential commodity is seized. The collector at his discretion may direct for the production of the seized commodity before him, and if he is satisfied that there has been contravention of the order, he may pass order for confiscation of the essential commodity so seized by any package covering the receptacle in which such essential commodity is found, and any animal, vehicle, vessel or other conveyance used in carrying such essential commodity. So here what is very fascinating, or what is very important aspect, is that it is not only that commodity that will be taken, but even that vehicle that is used for the same will also be taken. So that is why it mentions the procedure to be followed. Now, provided that without prejudice to any action which may be taken under any other provision of this Act, no food grains or edible oilseeds seized in the pursuance of an order made under Section 3 in relation thereto from a producer shall, if the seized food grains or edible oilseeds have been produced by him, be confiscated under this section. Provided further that in the case of any animal, vehicle, vessel or other conveyance, the owner of such animal or vehicle shall be given an option to pay in lieu of its confiscation a fine. So what is that? I am a vehicle owner. I was not knowing that my vehicle is used by the other person to take the commodity which is banned. Now, along with that commodity, my vehicle is also taken. Now, as an owner, what I can do? I will get back my vehicle because I never did that. But in lieu of that, I have to pay the market price. And the date of the seizure of the essential commodity is sought to be carried by such animal, vehicle, vessel or other conveyance. Now, let's discuss about the distinction between the seizure and the confiscation. Now, the Act uses the expressions confiscation and seizure in Section 6A, and under this section, a commodity which has been seized in pursuance of an order under Section 3 can be confiscated under the circumstances mentioned in Section A. Therefore, it is essential to know in brief the distinction between these two terms. What are they? Seizure and confiscation. Now, the expression, so let us see about the general meaning of it. The general meaning says that seize means to take possession contrary to the wishes of the owner of the property, and that such action is unilateral action of the person seizing it. So I am seizing it. You may not like to give it to me, but I have come to your shop and I have taken that. The reason being, it is illegally you are keeping that, but I am seizing it. And confiscation must be an act done in some way on the part of the government of the country. So seizing can be done by anybody, but confiscation can be done from the part of the government of a country where it takes place and in some way beneficial to that government. So government can confiscate. We are not using the term government can seize, government can confiscate, because in some way it is going to be beneficial to that government, though the proceeds may not be strictly speaking to be brought into its treasury. So the government will confiscate means it got the government control on it. The property that has been seized by you as now confiscated, but now it become the government property. They may not have brought it in reality in their home or in their storage, but now it is a government property. Now, what is the distinction that is provided under the Act? What is the interpretation that is provided under the Act? Under the Act, it says that essential commodity which has been seized could be confiscated. That's what I just now told you. A seizure may result in the confiscation by the government, but it is not that all those things that has been seized needs to be confiscated. So therefore, confiscation is an action posterior to the seizure of the essential commodity. A commodity that has not been seized cannot be confiscated, and seizure itself does not imply confiscation. The seizure should have been made by virtue of an order passed under Section 3 of the Act, and Clause J of Section 3 empowers the government to make an order for seizure of any essential commodity if an order made by the central government controlling production, supply, distribution, etc. of essential commodities has been or is about to be contravened. Therefore, any contravention or intended contravention of an order passed by the government under the Act may lead to seizure. And under the circumstances mentioned in section 6A, such seized commodity could be confiscated. So what we have seen is that seizure is the first step, and the second, only if there is a seizure, then there is a confiscation. But it is not that all seized properties or seized commodities can be confiscated. So they have mentioned it. So there is a need, that is why there is a need to make a distinction between the seizure and the confiscation. Now, another aspect is the issue of the show cause notice. There is a need to issue. So I spoke to you about the role of the collector. Collector is, we are now discussing about the administrative mechanism under the Essential Commodities Act. So the collector is given the power as an administrative head to deal with the issues or the challenges under the Commodities Act. Now, the procedure, how he will look into it. First is to issue a show cause notice. So no order, it clearly mentions, no order of confiscation of any essential commodity can be passed against any person without issuing a show cause notice and providing him an opportunity to make his representations under section 6B1. Now, issue of the show cause notice before confiscation. So before the confiscation takes, he need to issue a show cause notice. And it should be in writing. That's what very important. It's not that orally the collector can call you and tell that, see, I have already confiscated your property. A collector cannot do that. He should write. It should be in writing, informing. It's not that just writing in a one sentence, hello, I'm going to take your property, you are illegally done. It's not like that. You should write the grounds on which the proceeds of confiscation is made. On what ground, what violation he has done. You have to mention that. It's not that by orally or whims and fancies I can do. You should mention the grounds. And now, just by mentioning, I cannot just take. What is his next step? An opportunity should be provided for making a representation in writing. Okay, making a representation in writing within such reasonable time as may be specified in the notice against the grounds of confiscation. So, he should write the grounds for confiscation. So, giving a representation in writing and provide a reasonable opportunity of being heard. He should be heard. So, these are the issue, that is issuing of show cause notice by the collector. That this is also the procedural formalities which we are discussing. Now, what is the next step? What we can do? You can appeal against the confiscation. Against the confiscation, you can appeal. So, again, recollect, there were no provision earlier, but the present act, that is the Essential Commodities Act, provides for the same. It says that any person aggrieved by an order of confiscation under section 6A may appeal to the state government concerned within 1 month from the date of passing the order. The state government shall give an opportunity to the appellant to be heard and pass such order as it may think fit, confirming, modifying or annulling the order appealed against under section 6 subclause C1. Now, let us look into the judicial observations with respect to the administrative setup. The first decision is, we can say that the state of Kerala versus Mathai, that has been decided in 1961, it was pointed out that confiscation is not to be considered part of the sentence. So remember that it is not a punishment. When a collector comes and confiscates, it's not a punishment and it is not a part of the sentence for an offense. But it is only a mode. Remember, it is only a mode by which courts can dispose of the property which comes before it in the criminal trials. Now, in another case of Ramachandra versus Sub-Inspector of Police, 1976, power is conferred on the collector to confiscate any animal, vehicle, vessel or other conveyance if used in carrying the essential commodities. Unless the vehicle was used for carrying the essential commodities, the Deputy Commissioner had no jurisdiction to initiate proceedings for its confiscation, much less the police to seize it. So, a police cannot seize it and a deputy commissioner had no jurisdiction to initiate the proceedings for its confiscation. Then who is having the power, which we already know? It's the collector. Now, what's the next observation? The next observation is in the case of Hindustan Aluminium versus the Controller of Aluminium 1976 case. There it says that the collector has no jurisdiction to go into the validity of the seizure. He could only confiscate goods out of those seized. So that is why we already discussed the distinction between the seizure and the confiscation, in respect of which the contravention was established. Only if the seizure is a valid could the collector have the jurisdiction to go into the question whether there has been any contravention of the control order in respect of the whole or part of the goods seized. And this is entirely different from saying that a collector could go on with the inquiry postulated in section 6 and section 6A and section 6B, when the seizure itself, on which alone his jurisdiction to make an inquiry depends, is found to be illegal. So only if there is a kind of legality in the action he has taken, he can confiscate, and just because he has seized the property, he cannot confiscate and go for further. Now, the another aspect is with respect to the mental state. Now, the concept of mens rea is very important. We all know that in criminal law, mens rea is important. That means the culpable mind, the mind to create an offense. Now, section 10C provides for a presumption of culpable mental state, which includes intention, motive, knowledge of the fact, and the belief in a fact. It is now provided that in any prosecution of an offense under the Act which require a culpable mental state on the part of the accused, the court shall presume the existence of a mental state. So the presumption is there, and it is open to the accused to prove that he had no such mental state with respect to the act committed by him. So in the case of culpable, that is in case of the economic offences, that is under this, the mental state is very essential. That is what has been held in Natulal versus State of Madhya Pradesh, very celebrated case when it comes to the mens rea, actus rea perspectives in criminal law. So in this case, the Supreme Court held that mens rea or guilty mind is an essential ingredient for the offence punishable under Section 7 of the Essential Commodities Act. So, and that means intentional contravention of an order made under Section 3. That means you have an intention, then only it is punishable, or else it is not. So mens rea is an essential ingredient under the Essential Commodities Act, and it is observed by the Supreme Court that mens rea is a criminal offence. That is how it became a socio-economic offence. Now, mens rea by necessary implication may be excluded from the statute only where it is absolutely clear and implementation of the object of the statute would otherwise be defeated. Now, the statute should mention it. Here, the statute has mentioned it. That is why it has become very important. Now, another case of the Hariprasad Rao, it was observed that unless the statute either clearly or necessary implication rules out mens rea as a constituent part of a crime, an accused cannot be found guilty of an offence against the criminal law unless he has got a guilty mind. So, what is the nutshell? Mens rea is an essential ingredient for an offence under the Essential Commodities Act, which is a socio-economic offence. Now, whether the injunction can be granted by the civil courts? Yes. As per Section 12B, it expressly provides that no. So, what is the answer? No civil court can grant any injunction or make any order for any other relief against the central or the state government or any public officer in respect of any act done or purporting to be done by such person in his official capacity under the Act or any order made thereunder until after notice of the application for such injunction or report is given to the government or to such officer. Now, what are all the summary or how we can summarize regarding the enforcement mechanisms? First is that central government has been empowered to administer the provisions of the Act by issuing the orders, directions notified in the official gazette and by delegating the authority to the state governments and the administrators of the union territories. So, that means the central government can delegate it. They can administer themselves and they can also delegate it. So, that is how the enforcement mechanism comes under the Essential Commodities Act. Secondly, an essential commodity which has been seized could be confiscated, And so the confiscation is an action posterior to the seizure of an essential commodity. A commodity that has not been seized cannot be confiscated. So without the seizure, you cannot go further for the confiscation. So seizure itself does not imply confiscation. Just because you have seized, it does not mean that you have confiscated. And another aspect is mens rea or the guilty mind is an essential ingredient for the offense of the under the act. That is, it is very essential. You have a guilty mind, and that is what happened in Natulal case. He was a merchant, but he has kept the commodities, but he was not having that mind. So the court said that since he was not aware, and this is one of the issues which I have discussed also, one of the lacuna on this act is that if there is no clear law or there is no clear order that has been given, then it will create a problem. Now, what is this when we speak about the mens rea? What is it? And we are speaking about the mens rea means it is the culpable mind as well. And this will include the intention, then motive, knowledge of the fact and belief in a fact. Now, what we can see is that what we can say in a conclusionary part of this administrative, or we can say that enforcement mechanisms under the Essential Commodities Act. Essential Commodities Act is a very important legislation which is having a wider repercussions to protect the interest of the consumers, or we can say the common people. And if we have seen what happened when it got decontrolled after we got the independence, though it was for a brief period. So economic progress of the country is also depending on a kind of law. So without the legislative support, it becomes very difficult. So one of the three persons who are the main administrators are the central government, the state government, and the delegated government, or we can say that the delegations are done to the union territories. Okay, now the another aspect is the powers of the collector. So collector is the administrative head, and regional wise also collaboration purpose, and he will issue the order. And the most important aspect of this is administrative orders is with respect to the seizure and the seizure and the confiscation. So just because the seizure is done, it is not that it is confiscated, and he should give the notice, and it should be in writing, and he should give the other person also to speak about or to give his representation. And the culpable mind, or we can say that the intention or motive, is an essential element in order to prove an offense under the Essential Commodities Act, as mentioned or as has been backed by the Supreme Court also in the very famous case of Natulal versus state of Madhya Pradesh. And also no court can, granting of the injunction is also provided that no civil court can grant the injunction. So if the confiscation is made, you cannot go to the court for getting that injunction. So with this, we can say that the next class we will be discussing about the next aspect of that is known as the price fixing, or how the prices are fixed, or is there a need for the government to fix the prices for the commodity. So we have seen the enactment of the legislation in the last class, what are all the important provisions under it, whether the essential commodities are required or not, and whether it is a fixed. We have seen that it is not a fixed term of essential commodities. It changes from time to time, and the government will incorporate it accordingly. And secondly, we have seen what is the administrative, or we have seen what is the administrative procedures or administrative aspects of that comes under the mechanisms under the Essential Commodities Acts. Also we have seen what are all the administrative mechanisms. We have seen starting from the center, state, and the regional persons where the collaboration is taking place. And with this, we are concluding today's lecture. So thank you.